Welcome back to the Indiewood Podcast, where we talk about how to make better indie films. Because to make better indie films, you have to wear many hats. And this is a podcast about those many hats. This is episode 4, the last episode of season 2. And my guest is Zina Wilde, actor, producer, networker? Writer, thank you. Oh my God. I was like, there's one more. We've been talking about a whole lot of hats, a whole lot of interesting things. And now let's talk about money. Do you have some money for me for this podcast?
Wish. That'd be great.
Well,
no,
specifically,
we have money. It's like the law of attraction.
Yeah,
so
there we
like
go. Attract the money through the ether. Mostly about how to find money for your project.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some experiences to share, and then some hot takes, and then you do too.
Mm-hmm.
So this recent film that you've done, that we've been talking about, on the pod for this season, you have a director for it. You brought your team in, the team that we talked about in episode 2. And then you're funding this whole thing out of pocket.
Yes.
Yeah. And you know what? Good.
I have many thoughts on this, and I've been back and forth about this many times.
It's scary.
It's very scary.
Yeah. Because there's a lot more risk involved.
Huge risk.
Yeah. When it's not your money, like, cool.
Yeah.
You can screw up and then it could fail and then you could not get into festivals and it's like, cool, it's not my money, I'm not out of pocket. But when it's your money, there's a lot more fear. And I think self-doubt and self-deprecation at the end. If it doesn't succeed, you're like, oh, well, I'm a bad artist. So that's not true.
No. And to me, I think I started, everyone always says, don't put your own money into it, blah, blah, blah. But my filmmaking heroes all put their money into their projects. So I was like, well, these are the people that I am attracted to, so I'm going to do what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So I started thinking, like, wait, everyone keeps saying don't put your own money, but then I was like, okay, well, my favorite filmmakers are people that they're like, no, scratch that. Like, you should put your own money. And it was when I think it was literally after reading also the Duplass Brothers book.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, we made This Is John for $5. And that's what started their career.
Yeah.
And now they're who they are, and they're amazing. And to me, I truly think of them as my model.
Yeah. And granted, like, thinking of a Duplass film, and was This Is John where he was leaving the voicemail? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I think the big comfy chair was like $1,000. Right?
The comfy chair?
Yeah. I'm butchering the title. There's so many titles to think about and to remember. But, there's a distinct style.
Yes.
Like, you can't do, a sci-fi in that kind of style. You know what? Yeah, you can. I take that back immediately. Whenever I think of the Duplass brothers, there's always a unique kind of approach to filmmaking that feels very, not just DIY, but like visceral.
It's the reason why I love them is because they truly, truly, for me, check all the marks that I've been saying throughout this whole time. Like, it's personal, it's dangerous because it's personal, it's simple in some ways, and it's it doesn't try to be too clever. So I love those attributes because I think that they are so human, and people are so scared to do that. And what they write in this book it really spoke to me because they're like,
and the Duplass
book they were like,
what was the book called?
God, I forget. It was like, it's both of them writing it too. So I think that's the only one that they've written together. It's the last one. It was maybe 4 years ago or something that came out, and they were writing about this thing that they were like, and maybe I've heard them say that in podcasts.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, that's their kind of thing, is like, we made a movie for $1,000. Yeah,
and
so can you.
But then apart from that was that when after This Is John, they got hired, they got, these fancy agents and this and that. And then that year was the first year that they didn't make anything. And they were like, they went back to their people and they were like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Like, we haven't made anything. It's the first time we haven't made anything. And we're the darlings. And it was because everyone wanted that they were giving them funding or whatever. They wanted to do things their way. And they're like, you either will give us the money and you'll let us do it because this is what we do and this is how we can do it, or we're not the people for you because we don't know how to make movies like that. So then they went back.
And just to add, this is an interesting kind of connection to episode 2 of our pod where we talked about finding your team.
Mm-hmm.
There's also something about finding members of your team that are funding your films. Yes. And I have a friend who's working with a director and an actor, and they're making a movie, and they've just finished the script, and the director's like, cool, I'm going to go talk to my finance team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like, oh, he has, an accountant in his office, and, they're literally just people with money who fund his films.
Yeah.
And that is, they're the executive producing team of that thing. And it might be harder to find those folks for you if you're doing like short films. Maybe not. I know some people just want to give you money to make movies.
That can happen, but like going back to what they were saying, that became my model also, that I was like, okay, this is, I think, the way, is they went back to their teams, to their team, and they were like...
The Duplass Brothers.
Yes, we make movies, not meetings. So
goodbye, you're fired.
It's...
Well, maybe not fired.
I don't know what they did about that, but I think it's really important. I was like, it's true, you can talk about things until you're blue in the face and you don't do anything. Yeah. And the most important thing is that you actually end up making something. Yeah. So to me, that became the thing and John Cassavetes is another great example. He put his own money in his movies, and he's another one of my favorite filmmakers. So, and he made like epic movies that they're classic. But I think that again, though, it's like, okay, so how do you do that? How do you put your own money, and how many movies can you do that for? Yeah. So I think that finagling of this is to, instead of try to make a movie for a short film for $50,000, be smart about it. Try to cut down in other ways and make it for $5,000. Make it for $9,000. Make it for $10,000 and save to do that, and then put in all... that's what I do. I mean, I'm also very frugal, and I'm very just not
your couch money.
I don't. I'm not like, whatever, it's okay, who cares? But it was gradual. It started from making a movie. My first movie we made for $500. Then another one we made for $1,000. Then another one. The last one we made had a bigger budget in a way. But again, I wasn't gonna break the bank for it. Because I understand that that's probably money that I won't see.
You can't make money off of short films.
No.
I mean, you shouldn't go into making a short film to be like, I'm going to make big bucks.
No, that's not that shouldn't be the focus. But it's a proof of concept that if it does do well, then you can make it into a feature, and then you can make money. Then money is important. Money is something that everyone needs to get paid also at this point.
In the eternal words of Cabaret, money makes the world go around.
Absolutely does.
For those musical theater.
I am a Taurus, so we're all about the money.
For the Fosse heads.
But I do think that the smart way to do it is to just be like, just write something that you don't have to spend money on things that don't require that, and you can do it, and you can make it. You don't have to wait around for the finance team or the this or the that. And to be honest, there's something really freeing about also not having to respond to anybody. And I've made short films that we've had like funding, and it's a different experience.
It is, it's more cooks in the kitchen.
It's slower.
Much slower.
Much slower, which I have no patience. I like to do things, and I like to do them fast, and I'm like, I'd rather work harder for 2 weeks and make this extra money and be like, I'm working towards that. I'm going to do that, and then you have it. And but that's just me. Right? That's how
I think there's multiple approaches to it, but I like your approach because I like the idea of keeping it simple, and putting in your own money because you have control, but you're not breaking the bank. And granted, $5K is a lot of money to some people. But, you're not just throwing money away onto something. This is your art. This is your craft. This is your career on some level. And I don't think people should be ashamed of putting in thousands of dollars into their film, because it's not just for fun.
No,
This is purposeful.
It's it's like some people do it because they want to go on vacation. Some people do it because they want to buy things. Some people
going to Paris throwing your money away.
Yeah,
No.
so it depends on what you want to do with your life and with your money and whatever. And no judgment on any of this, but to me, it came to a point where I had done it quite a lot and it was like this way smaller budgets back in the day. But then I look back and now there's a full body of work that is also, you can see the continuation of it, and you can see how it changed.
Yeah.
And that's really cool in my opinion, like to see like, look, it started like that and we made this and it was still great. So like, you really don't need to also, like, if you have
I made a film in December for nothing. Literally, my friend came over. We had a camera. My wife was in it. It was one character. My wife's an actress, not because she's my wife. She's very talented. And yeah, we shot a movie in a couple of days, and it's great. It's not like is it going to win an Oscar? Is it going to change minds? Is it going to revolutionize filmmaking? No, but I think it's enjoyable. It has a message. It has something to say, and it's just my people, my team.
Totally. And I think that especially if you're starting out and then you're seeking for other people that are starting out, you truly can make a movie for $0.
Yeah.
I just, for me at this point in my life, I wanted to
spend some money on it.
Spend some money on it to pay people, because I've done it enough where I was like, okay, we're all doing it as a favor, and I'm like, I think it's time to move from that.
But it's also kind of bringing it back to that thing we said where it's gradual. Finding your people is gradual. You have to put time into it.
Yeah.
You have to put time into learning your craft as a writer, as an actor, as a director. Networking takes time, and this does take time too. And just to add something to this idea of kind of keeping it simple, I have a friend who's an actor who's been writing and doing really well, and then they've partnered with a producer to make a short, and the producer's like, we'll throw $50,000 behind it. And is it that necessary? Because a $50,000 budget, made Jeff Nichols, director of Midnight Special, and Loving, and recently Jeff Nichols, great filmmaker. I think he's really talented. Made his first feature for $50,000, Shotgun Brothers, with Michael Shannon and the Bike Riders. Thank you, Haley. And so, like, that's a feature, that he made for $50,000 called Shotgun Brothers. So, like, yes, things are more expensive now, but when I think people are looking at short films, like I've done this recently last year with a short film I wanted to do. And we budgeted it out, and I was like, oh, it's going to be like $45,000. And I looked at it, and I was like, yeah, that's totally fine. It's not my money. And then this year rolled around, because this was like late last year. This year rolled around, and I go, you know what? I need to cut it. I need to make it 15.
Yeah.
I need to make it so much less, because it's unnecessary to make it that expensive.
Yeah.
It can be smaller. I think if a film is too expensive, a short film is too expensive, like $50,000, because that's too expensive. It's indicative of it being not clear in what it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to say. And I think I'm already making a feature out of a short.
Yeah.
At that point.
And, I think it's really important to mention, because this is something that people always ask me. They're like, how do you get all that, all these people to give you the space or do this or do that, or how to
befriend them?
It's not like, to me, it's not just befriend them, give something back, because you cannot keep asking people for favors. That's really annoying, and it's just not okay. So the thing is to just be of service to something that they need. Come up with it. Don't ask them. Be like, it's like almost offering something that is like a trade. Like, okay, I can do this for you. Would that be interesting to you? And no one is also obligated to give you anything. No one. It's like, go find it. It's out there. There's so many resources.
Oddly enough, you say that. We when we shot Stupid Cupid in New York, we had a scene in a Georgian restaurant, and they had a special food called hachapuri, and that is like a literally a cheese boat. It's like a
Yeah.
bread with cheese in it. And we got that location for free.
Yeah.
The switch, not the switch, but the exchange was we would cater. We would get catering from them.
Sure.
So for the crew. So they catered our entire, like we paid for catering. We fed everybody from the restaurant, but then they gave us the location because they opened at like 5 and we were shooting from, noon to 5. So it works out. And I see where that kind of comes from.
It literally, like, I don't think I've ever paid for a location. Ever.
And everyone's like, how do you get permits in LA?
And it's
It's
so,
like, what?
It's like literally like I got an overnight
Mm-hmm.
garage,
Mm-hmm.
like with the cars inside,
Uh-huh.
upstate New York, in the middle of nowhere. The guy wasn't even present.
Oh
He
my
just
God.
gave
You
me
just-
the keys.
Well, that's interesting.
I still don't know how that happened.
That's
that was some
sketchy.
kind of divine intervention.
Don't park your car in upstate New York,
Like,
apparently.
seriously, I was like, what? How did that
Yeah.
happen?
Long time ago, this was almost like 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
when I was first here, I helped a friend of mine shoot some web series stuff for a CSI show. I forget what the big show, but it was a big show and they had some like web series content. And we literally were like in a hotel room, just hanging out. Like
Yeah.
it was like no permits or nothing. It was me. I was
amazing.
gaffing and gripping for him. He was DPing as a director, and there was 2 actors, and it was like a spy thriller.
Totally. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just talk to people, be nice to them. Like, don't expect things. If they say no, they say
Yeah.
no.
But like, isn't that what friendship is?
Yeah.
But like to bring it back to funding, we talked a little bit about putting your own money into it. We talked about bringing somebody else's money into it, which is, could be a production company that wants to make a feature out of your short, fund your short so you can make it and then be like, this is it. And then they would be like, you're a good filmmaker.
Go to
Here's more money.
festivals,
Yeah.
yeah.
But there's also grants, and not to keep bringing it back to Stupid Cupid, I just think it's a really interesting use case.
Absolutely.
We got a grant for that film.
Yeah.
But I feel like the grant is a unique combination of both worlds where it's your money, quote unquote, and it's somebody else's money.
Sure.
So they were like, here's money, have fun. And then we could do whatever we want with it. We had to deliver a short film or a project, but then, it was our money. However, it came with stipulations. We had to shoot in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we got everybody, we flew all the actors down to New York, minus you, because you were already there at the time. And so like, that's also an opportunity,
Absolutely.
because it allows you the freedom to, fuck around with your own money
Of course.
with some stipulations.
Sure.
No one's going to be like, oh, I don't like this scene.
Right.
They're going to be like, no, you have to shoot in New York because this is a grant from the city of New York.
Exactly.
So
Things like, or a Kickstarter, you could do a Kickstarter
Yeah,
and
true.
like do that.
Yeah.
It's still your money because it's coming to you, but it's
it
not
also
really
has a
your
little
money.
bit of baggage,
It
because
does.
it
It
and
does.
it depends on how big your network is and your community.
And it's not an endless source.
Yeah.
Like people will stop giving you money at some point.
Exactly.
So
The one thing that I will kind of expand on that and to bring it back to the Duplass Brothers is, I forget where I heard this, but he was answering questions with filmmakers and was like, how do I make a movie now in 2024? And with, there was something he touched on, Mark Duplass, where he said, oh, well, do you have a YouTube channel? It's like your story, I forget what the story was very, it tied into YouTubing, the YouTube space. So start a YouTube channel, gain a following, then ask him for money to make your short.
yeah.
So there's this multi-pronged approach to not just think about the film or the script or the idea as a film, but as a piece of consumed art, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but just something that's a bit bigger than the project.
Sure.
And to start thinking about yourself not as your project, but as the person who created it.
Yeah.
You are going to outlive your project by years, hopefully decades. Your career is going to outlive that. You're going to do so much more. And I think people don't really focus on the career of being a director. Having said that, sometimes people lean in too much the other way and they're like, I'm a great director and I made a cool short and I'm better than Hollywood. Right. And then you watch their stuff and you're like, no. Yeah. So don't be afraid to use your own money. I've used my own money. You've used your own money.
I've used my own money.
Don't go into debt.
Don't go into debt.
Yeah.
Definitely
I think
not.
that's the distinction of don't go into debt.
And if it stresses you out, like I can't pay rent,
that's going into debt.
That's going into debt. So then don't do
Yeah.
that. It's like be in a place where you're like, whether it is that you have a money making job and you're like, I can put in a couple more weeks into this and then make that, and it gives you the incentive.
Yeah.
I think that that's the way, that's one way, or whether it means that you're better at saving, or whether it means that you, I don't know, sublet your apartment. And
some people donate blood. I mean, it's like
whatever.
Not even $100 or whatever, but it's still something.
Something, whatever it is that you can do. Like everyone, we all have our ways, especially if we live in these expensive cities. And, you know, some people have money because they have money, whatever it is. But number one rule, I think, is put your own money, but be clever about it.
Yeah, don't go into debt.
And just like really try to cut from the budget instead of, and then make it with that budget. So then that way is a fast way to do it. And, you know, ask your friends and make it in that way. And just little by little, then you make one movie, then you're like, if that movie does well, then more people want to be involved with it. Then
But then you have other people's money, and then you start making movies.
That's the thing.
It's the way I think about filmmaking. You know, because people sometimes go into like the corporate world and they're like, how do I make it in blah 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 industry? It's like, oh well, you get a job here, and you put in time there, and then you get a job there, and you get promoted. You know, blah blah blah. And there's a ladder. That's what they call it, the corporate ladder. And then people are like, oh, how do I make it in the film industry? And so the way I analogize it, the analogy I have is, if the corporate world is a treehouse, there's a ladder and you climb it. And if the filmmaking world is a treehouse, it's just a house in a tree.
Yeah.
However you can get up there, that's how you get up there.
Yeah.
Because everyone has a different story.
And you can get to the top and then go right back in the bottom.
And you could cut the tree down, and then you have to find another tree.
Right back where you started.
You have to grow your own tree. Yeah, there's multiple ways of making a filmmaking treehouse.
Yes.
You grow your own tree, build your own house, you know.
But I do have to say there's something about making your own stuff, and especially as an actor right now, that it gives you so much more power.
Yeah.
And the way that the industry is changing right now, I think it might be one of the few ways to keep yourself relevant, I think.
Yeah. I see a lot of actors doing sketch comedy on Instagram, on social media, starting YouTube channels, starting their own short films. We live in a world where we are so connected that musicians don't need a record contract to be successful.
And things have really changed, and especially since the strike and after, like things are production, especially, I mean, everyone keeps saying that to me because I'm European. So everyone is like, everything has moved to Europe. Yeah. So, and
now you may have, quote unquote, not TBD, but it's a mystery still, have gotten a show in Greece.
Yeah. So I'm really excited because
is it in Greek?
There. No,
it's in English.
That's
interesting.
An Greek-American production.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, we can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
Just to recap, use your own money. Don't break the bank. Don't spend too much money. I mean, it's all a balance of little things. But just enjoy the craft and enjoy being a filmmaker. Because if you don't, why are you doing it? Go home.
No, totally.
Go be an accountant.
True. It's like it's gonna be a little scary. A little scary is good. Too scary, not good.
Yeah.
That's and going back to the don't go into debt. But and I highly recommend that book, the Duplass Brothers book. It's really like Brothers.
Like Brothers by Mark and Jay Duplass. Yeah, there we go.
It's really inspiring. So
I'll have to read it. I have read a couple, but not of theirs. But I've read a couple of those filmmakers who were kind of DIY from the beginning. Robert Rodriguez. Zina, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah, thank you for a wonderful season of amazing things. We talked about a whole lot of things that I wasn't even kind of like familiar with. That I learned a lot. I learned to kind of pivot away from the direct emotion that I would write for a character and do the opposite because it makes them stronger. It not necessarily like, oh, if they're happy, make them sad, but they're still sad. They're trying to be happy. That's I think the clarification there. So I did learn a lot. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I learned a lot too.
I'm glad.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad. And hopefully,
effects and practical.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we had a whole episode of special effects. I hope the listeners learned a lot too. And we're gonna have a new guest next season after our mid-season special. So Zina, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Indiewood Podcast. You can find us on anywhere you find your podcasts and on Instagram at IndiewoodPod. See you next time.
From the CFA Network, Cinematography for Actors is bridging the gap through education and community building. Find out about us and listen to our other podcast at cinematographyforactors.com.
Cinematography for Actors Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. For more information on fiscal sponsorship, donations, because we're tax exempt now, so it's a tax write-off, and upcoming education, you can email us at contact@cinematographyforactors.com. Thanks.